All right, everybody, welcome back to Around the Draft. Joining me is just Dalton today. Unfortunately, Jake had, I guess, a job to do. Who has that nowadays, right? Not me. No, I'm just kidding. Um, no, but Jake couldn't make it. Hopefully, he might. I did tell him to hop on if he wants to, if he gets home at some point, and he can make fun of our lists or agree with us, whichever one it ends up falling on. I also told him he has to let us know what he thinks of Tyler Warren, because Dalton and I, of course, have been spewing
Yeah.
about Tyler Warren to him for how long now, so we need to know what he thinks. But we are. This is the tight end episode. This week, guys. We're also going to be having a first round mock, our second one, now with the finalized order minus the playoff standings, obviously. We'll see how the playoffs roll around, see who ends up picking where in that range. But we at least know, especially the teams who are not going to be participating in the playoffs. Dalton, of course, one of those being the Raiders, and they should be picking higher. But what are you going to do?
I was looking, somehow they would be like, if this were same record last year, they'd be somewhere between 2 and 5.
Yeah, because for some reason, half the NFL this year decided they didn't really want to participate super hard. So what are you going to do? And in a class where it's not really one of the years you really want to do that per se.
No.
It's kind of weird. So, it happens sometimes. It doesn't have to always be for good reason. Just some teams aren't very good this year. So there you go. I would even argue some teams in the playoffs aren't that good. And I'm kind of talking about one of my teams right now, specifically, if you can't tell by that. They're not doing
They're
so
the same team every year. It's just
true. They just found a way to do it in a stupider and more aggravating way. That's all they really managed to do. So good for them, I suppose. Beside the point. Going to be a fun episode. Tight ends in this class, especially the top of this tight end class, is super fun. One player in particular, of course, I already brought up. Not going to claim there's any bias here, although maybe a tiny bit. But honestly, Tyler Warren is pretty great. We'll get to him much later in the show.
Yeah.
But we're going to give you our top 5 tight ends plus honorable mentions, which is really going to ultimately end up being almost like a top 10. We just won't spend as much time on the guys outside of our top 5. But Dalton, overall, I kind of already brought it up, and I think you agree. How do you feel about this tight end class after watching it?
I love it. I think it is at least probably a top 3 position group in this class, or in this draft class overall. I think it's funny, the value isn't great because I think the 3 best classes are probably going to end up being running backs, tight ends, and safeties. But
right. Which we'll get to safeties later, but I feel like we're
not
on
ideal.
that path at least.
Yeah. But man, I have 5 tight ends that I think should go in the first 2 rounds, and I think I have 7 with a day 2 or better grade.
Yeah, don't see that very often at the tight end position, at least in terms of valuing them in that way. So definitely a lot of fun, definitely fun class, especially the top 5 for me. I'm really a fan of. Guys outside of the top 5 too, I definitely are a fan of. One in particular that I'm either high on or kind of low on, depending on who you ask. I think there's a couple people that might have them higher. Most have them a little bit lower, but we'll get into that later. But we're going to start with our honorable mentions, right? Because like I said, this is a top 5 tight ends, but there's too many tight ends to talk about to do just a top 5. So we'll start kind of go through our 10 through 6 list a little bit, see where we kind of differ there, see if there's anything the same. With just 2 of us, should be pretty smooth here. I know normally I have to kind of keep tickers on each where we rank everybody and make sure we don't talk about somebody 7 times, because I'm oh, who's your number 6? We were talking about him. Crap. So it should be a little bit easier, just 2 of us. But go ahead and just start with one of your guys inside the top 10 through 6 that you want to talk about first.
So my 10th guy is Terrence Ferguson. From Oregon.
Okay.
I like his ability as a blocker, because one in the 10 to 6 range, it's a lot more of your move tight ends, but a lot of them can't necessarily play in line, and I think he's one that can, which I do really like. The only issue is that he just doesn't give you much as a receiver. I mean, he is fast enough that he can, but there's just no wiggle to his game, no nuance to his route running. That's kind of the issue there. He's not going to be able to do a ton extra. He's not going to make a bunch of spectacular catches, but fun play. a reliable blocker that I think has a future in the NFL as like a team's number 2.
That's interesting. He's actually my number 5 tight end in this class. I think I'm just higher on him as a receiver. I agree that he doesn't have a lot of wiggle and like creativity after the catch, but I do think you look at the numbers, he was very good after the catch as a receiver for Oregon. I think because of the way they used him, but they got him on the move already. He kind of reminds me athletically a little bit, not as fast in a straight line, but Theo Johnson out of Penn State actually, where they aren't very creative runners, but they are effective after the catch because of their size and speed, right? Like once they get up to speed, they're effective in that way. And I think if they use him correctly in the NFL as a receiver, where he's not going to, like you say, he's not the most overall fluid mover, but I do think he runs routes a little bit better than probably people give him credit for. I think if they can get him to, one, get up to speed on a lot of his routes and allow him to get down the field first, then he can be a weapon, or get him the ball short where he has a runway to get up to speed and kind of get up to style. And you saw that at times this past year too. And the blocking element is kind of ultimately what moves him up ahead of some of the guys below him for me, where I think he can play like actual tight end as well, right? Yeah. That combination gets him to 5 for me, because there's a couple of guys below him that I don't think have as much upside as a receiver, and also either can't block as well as he can.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I would just like to see a little more and I think it might have been how Oregon's offense ran, but I would like to see more production in the red zone.
Yeah, he's not a contested catch guy. That's the other thing too, is he's not a physical player as a route runner or as a receiver.
He's 6'5", 255.
Right. It is a little bit weird. So that's why, like, I think the upside as receiver isn't as high as the guy is obviously above him, which is why he slots in at 5 and not a little bit higher for me, and even higher than some of these other guys. But I think the overall package is a tight end that, like, I'm confident he can be like at least a starting caliber tight end because of the combination of skills. Whereas everyone else below him, it's like they might not be an actual tight end at all, or at least in usage, or they don't bring as much, speed elements or like athleticism element to the table. So, but I get why you'd have him a little bit lower though if you're not as high on the receiving ability. So. Yeah, makes sense. My number 10 guy actually was a guy that I was sort of intrigued by because I heard some good things about him, but ultimately just kind of was like, he's fine. Jake Brenningstool out of Clemson. He's again, I think he's kind of fine at everything. He doesn't wow you as a receiver, doesn't wow you as a blocker. I think he's an NFL caliber guy overall. Like I think he's a good enough blocker, and he's got decent size to use that as an element in his game. And he's not a slow player, but he's not exactly explosive either. Just kind of felt to me, and he was the last guy I watched before we're doing the show today. Just kind of didn't stand out at all, so I had to drop him down as the last player in my list of 10.
That's fair. He's around there for me. I'm a little higher on him. He's my 7th tight end.
Okay. Gotcha.
I do like while he doesn't have a ton of explosiveness, especially after the catch.
Yes, especially that.
He does have a lot of quickness on his routes, which he is going to create separation, which I really do like. I think that's huge, especially for a guy like him that isn't a great hands catcher.
He's not. There's a couple
into his body a lot. Yeah. So I think being able to get that separation is going to be big for him. But like if he can, I do think like hands are something that I do think you can coach to an extent.
It can get better for sure. You've seen guys in the NFL do that for sure.
Yeah. And I think with his frame, I do think there's a lot of potential there. Being like one of the little strengths I wrote on his notes was being 6'6".
Yeah, it does help. Like when you're that big, like there's a frame there to work with, right? I just think he does need to get better with his hands, and you hope you can do that at the next level a little bit. We've seen guys do that. Kind of the guy that comes to mind is like Evan Ingram, right? Like is kind of a big felt like he dropped everything, and all of a sudden he's not really that kind of guy anymore. Much more reliable player. But just to me, just didn't stand out enough to kind of crack above these guys. There is a player that I could easily slot him in over because of we can talk about him next, because I think we probably should get this out of the way, because he's not a tight end to me at all. Played more in line this year, so I guess he's still trying to cosplay as one, is the way I described it in my notes. But Aronde Gadsden, the second out of Syracuse, I slotted him in at 9 simply because he does have receiving value, right? But he's not a tight end to me. I just don't think he is.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I think he has going for him is that between like what we've seen the last couple years and what we're going to see with the top of this class, especially, I do think the tight end position is changing. And I
Yes.
think teams are
Yes.
beginning to rethink that position a lot. And like, I think the traditional inline tight end is going away, but you have to be able to do it sometimes. And
Yes.
he just doesn't. He's a wide receiver.
Right. The problem with him ultimately is, and there's guys that are above him that I think are kind of also guys who probably shouldn't be playing a traditional inline tight end role much, if at all. Right. However, I at least think those guys sort of can, or they're so good at what else they do that I don't care that they don't. And I don't
Yeah.
think Gadsden falls in either category. I think he's a very good contested catch player. I think he's a great possession wide receiver. Again, wide receiver. I think he'd be a big slot in the right offense. He's not explosive enough to kind of offset the fact that he isn't an actual tight end. And so he's just basically kind of a slower, big slot receiver, which there's a role for that in the NFL with the team. I'm sure that someone will find a way to sort of use him as a receiving threat, but I just don't see it happening consistently. And then more importantly, he's not going to, if you want him to be a tight end, like he's either going to have to change his game and like gain weight and do the things differently, or you're going to have to be in a very specific role in a very specific offense. And they're just, I don't know how many roles exist for this type of player, honestly.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I think you could see a team like wanting to go after him for is there's going to be like, I think you could imagine an offensive coordinator saying, if we have him put on 10 pounds and just get him to be a competent blocker, we can really use this guy. But like, I think that's kind of what he's going to have to be, because if you want him to be a big slot, there's so many other guys that can do that better.
Yeah, and just that are more explosive, that have more going for them as receiving threats at the next level. Because you watch his tape, and I like what I see in terms of the possession stuff, the ability to have contested catches because of his frame. Like all that stuff is there. I think his contested catch percentage was like 50 something percent. Like it's pretty good. And he got on a lot of contested catches, unfortunately, because he doesn't separate super well, because it's not very quick at the top of his routes. He doesn't have a lot of explosiveness. Now he can get up to speed eventually, and then he can run a little bit. Like we saw, there was a couple plays for Syracuse this year where once he got the ball and had room to run, he would get up to speed, and it was like, okay, I could see that a little bit. But he's a slow starter, and like a very slow starter. It's just not very quick with anything he does.
Yeah, he also showed that contested catch ability a lot, because like he
Exactly.
played with a quarterback who never saw a 50-50 ball he didn't want to throw.
That's also fair. And to McCourt's credit, it was usually pretty good. Now, sometimes it was not so good, but he definitely he was throwing that ball. Let me put it that way. He was.
But you're
He was
not going to
chucking that
get
thing.
like, normally a guy in his position is going to get maybe a handful of those contested catch situations a year, not several a game.
Yeah,
Like
it was like I
in
think it was
Syracuse.
like 29 of them this year. I think something like that, which is pretty
Like, it's
high up
insane.
there. Yeah, it's just not. It's not exactly what you.
And that's one guy.
Yeah, there's one player, but yeah, not like for the team. That's just one dude. It was like 29. Now again, like it's good that he's able to handle those, and it's good that he was successful on many of them. But you don't want to be in that many contested catch situations at any level of football. You just don't really want to do that. So we'll see ultimately with him, but I had to put him no higher than that simply because I don't know what he's actually going to play the next level. Another guy I want to throw out there, just because I don't know if you have him. I'm pretty confident you're not going to have him outside of your honorable mentions here, but Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech.
I'm so glad you brought him up.
That dude is so. Listen, if you need a second tight end, if you're like the Dolphins and if you keep Johnny Smith, I don't know, or if you're a team that just has a tight end that's like he's fine at blocking, but really he's out there to catch passes, draft this dude and have fun with two tight end sets, man. Like he will block the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many times. Yeah, like literally, he's 260, like he's full size. Obviously, if you're blocking tight end, played Georgia Tech. Now, granted, Georgia Tech is no longer the team that runs the ball 95% of the time, but still very much a running offense there. The amount of times I saw him be the guy who sprung runs from the quarterback with King or whoever it was running, it just felt like he was the focal point a lot in the running game, and for good reason. Like he blocks the whistle. He latches onto dudes and they have a hard time getting off of him. Like you could tell he's about that. Like he wants to be doing this. And I think that matters almost as much as anything else, especially at the next level.
Yeah, he was my tight end 11. So
I had him at 8 simply. I had him at 8 simply because I'm like, I have to respect that this. Yeah. Now again, I don't know if he's going to catch more than 10 passes in a season at any point. I think he only caught 19 this year for Georgia Tech, but I don't really care because you're not drafting him to be the tight end of your offense. You're drafting him to make sure your tight end 1 doesn't have to block the defensive end 20 times a game. Like you don't. That's you don't want anyone else doing that except a guy like this. So.
And he could have a long career doing that. Like my comp.
Oh yeah.
My comp is Lee Smith.
I love that.
Long career reference as a very good blocking tight end. Long successful career.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe caught 10 passes a year, if that. And he has 3 touchdowns a year.
You love it. People lose him in the red zone probably a couple times a year, like you said.
Yep.
Like get a couple free touchdowns. Love that. No problem there. Like I think again, like a guy like not quite as much anymore because I feel like he isn't doing this as well. But like a guy like Drew Sample for the Bengals, you know, the guy that's like he's not going to catch passes really for you, but he's always out there. He's effective at what he does. Like this is the eating your vegetables tight end pick, right? Like this is what teams like the Dolphins, for example. I want to throw them in there. This is the type of player the Dolphins need more of. Right? Like, I get it. You guys are fast, and Johnny Smith was awesome for you this year, this and that. You need more dudes like this. Because right now, he might be a better blocker than 2/3 of your offensive line. So, like, just throw that out there. You know, this is the type of player teams like that need, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I throw him out there. Anyone else in your, like, 10 to 6 range you want to talk about a little bit? Because I have a couple more guys to throw out there.
The only 2 guys that we didn't mention, one was Oscar Delp from Georgia.
I said I didn't watch him because the Georgia tight ends just upset me. Not really because of their own fault or anything like that, but Georgia's offense is just not the same this year. So
yeah,
I am going to watch them for sure. I am definitely going to watch them, but I didn't get to them for this. So what do you think about Delp?
I like Delp. I think I like Delp more than Urasek, which I didn't originally, but I think Delp just really smooth out route runner.
Yes.
I do think I'd like to see him be more of a blocker and just get a little stronger in general. Like that's his problem because he doesn't break any tackles in the open field because he's just not very strong. But like I think if you wanted a big slot, that's the guy you'd draft. He is very much we'll say thrift store Brock Bowers.
Thrift store Brock Bowers is great.
Yeah, I don't want to say Walmart or like generic Brock Bowers. No, he's like thrift store Brock Bowers.
That
or maybe even right. like Salvation Army Brock Bowers.
Okay, I can accept that because again we're talking about Brock Bowers, who you know as well as anybody should know is he's certainly something else. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, similar vibes. Obviously, like a quarter of the talent, but still a lot of talent.
Right. Yeah, good player. I think I liked him going into the season. I know, and then I just kind of Georgia pissed me off every time I watched them play. So I'm like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. So admittedly, I haven't seen much of him. Yeah, Carson Beck will do that for you, and he will also do that for an NFL team very soon, probably. He's going to end up getting drafted by somebody who like clearly has a quarterback problem, and then they have to eventually go to him because he's a rookie, and it's going to be like, all right, man.
Like, this year's Spencer Rattler.
It's going to be like I do think it's him and Quinn Ewers are battling for that though every game or every week. It feels Ewers is at least still out there trying to battle for that, and he might not even come out anyway. He might say, "Screw this! I'm not going to the NFL."
Apparently, there's like all kinds of like tampering stuff going on with him now.
I have heard that too, which is hilarious. Yeah. Tampering for Quinn Ewers in 2024, 2025, actually now. Like, geez.
Although here's the thing: if you're Penn State and if you're Penn State and you're worried that Allen is gonna go on a run here and then declare for the draft, because if they somehow win the national championship game,
he better go.
He's going.
He better go.
Pribula's kind of. I don't think Pribula can like back out of the transfer now. I don't think
so either. Honestly, though, I don't know the rules anymore. Do you? A freaking true freshman who hasn't played a snap already transferred for Oregon to like wherever he's going. He never even actually was like on the team technically.
Yeah.
He's already transferring.
There
I don't know.
There are no rules anymore.
Yeah, so Bo might be playing for them anyway.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'll be honest with you though. If you told me Quinn Ewers, if I had the option between Quinn Ewers and the Matt like mystery box, I'm slamming that mystery box on the table, bro. Not even because I think it's actually better. I just don't want to watch that because I'm covering this
Quinn
team.
Ewers or Ethan Gruckenmeyer.
Dude, I'll roll the dice on Grunkemeyer. I don't care. He was pretty well. Man. He was a 4-star, I think, right? Sure, why not? You know, might be fun. You got a coordinator who likes to just do weird shit anyway. You can probably figure it out. You know, I don't know, but no, I don't know honestly. I mean, obviously yours is probably better for next year, but I don't know. I kind of just want to stop watching him play. I don't know. Anyway, that's beside the point. No, but in general, yeah, like the Georgia tight ends, I definitely need to watch again here. Two guys, my other two guys outside of the top 5, I wanted to get your opinion on. So I have Mason Taylor at 7 from LSU.
I have 6.
Yeah, he's a good player. He is. I think he's kind of just a balanced, well-rounded tight end, and in this class, normally that puts you in a top 5 for a class like this. I think there's 5 guys better than him, or at least have more potential than him. But he does do a lot of things well. I think he's a good blocker. He's full-size tight end. Again, not super explosive, but I think he is explosive enough in the receiving game. I think he does give you stuff there. He's kind of another one of these like nondescript tight ends for me in this class, where it's like he's really good at everything he does. So I'm not super worried about him like not translating or something like that. But I don't know how early I would take him.
Yeah, he pisses me off.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. He should be tight end 3 in this class.
Yeah.
There's no reason why he should be a first-round caliber player. But the way he plays sucks.
Yeah.
Like it's so like the potential's there, but like he does not play like he's 255. Like you watch him block, and he does not, and he gets overpowered by big safeties, which is you can't have that. And it's just and it comes down to like where it's just really bad attitude. And like the way, and like even with the ball in his hands, he doesn't dominate the way you'd like him to.
The play strength isn't as much as you'd imagine it to be, is I think the biggest thing to me. He just doesn't play with the same power that you'd think he would.
Yeah. But for his size, he is really athletic, and his route running is really crisp. His awareness of like space is really good. And I love one thing I did pick up on, great late hands. Like
he flashes his hands late. Like he has receiving. You could tell that he's a natural receiver, which is huge.
But he also blocks like one, and it's like
with his size, you want him to be better. Like you said, it just
exactly.
He should be an inline. Like he should be a like classic like inline tight end that you can flex out a little bit. He has the natural receiving ability to do that. Again, I think he's a smooth mover. I don't think he's super explosive as a mover to me. But he is. You could tell like he's light on his feet. Like he's not a guy that has sand in his pants as a tight end. Like he can get out off the line and do stuff. But like you said, if he's not going to play with more attitude in his game, he's going to get beat up by defensive ends at the next level, by linebackers, crash. Like he's just not going to be an effective player in a lot of ways if he doesn't play more physical. And if it comes down to like he just doesn't do that or doesn't want to do that, then that's going to hinder him. Or if he can't do it, just if he for some reason just doesn't have that play strength, he's going to have to figure out a way to get that up a little bit more. Like it doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be like this physical presence necessarily, but he has to be better than he's been. And I don't know. It's weird.
And it really seems more mental than anything else. It's like
it should be because of his build. Like there should be nothing holding him back physically speaking, like you said. Like, and that's almost more frustrating because if there's nothing holding you back physically, like do you know how many tight ends that are like below him in this class that I wish had his ability, and then like would actually be able to do something with it? Right. It's just weird to me. Like I don't know. Like he should be significantly better than like Gadsden as a run blocker, and he really isn't significantly better than him, I don't think. Like at least not really. Like it's weird. Yeah. I mean LSU also just they have weird. Their players are weird sometimes with stuff, but in general,
he
like
needs to go somewhere with a dick of a tight ends coach.
Yeah, he really does. Honestly, yeah, that's probably what he probably just needs to be told. Like, you're bigger and should be stronger than a lot of the dudes you're playing against. And you're getting bullied. What's that about? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, is that what you want people to think about you every week? That they're just like, oh, we can target this dude in the run game. Like, don't worry about him. Just run through him. It's fine. I think that's probably part of it for sure. And the guy I have at 6, and I wanted to put him higher, but I restrained myself because I understand that he's kind of. The comparison I have is funny because I mentioned him earlier in the show, but I think that he could potentially be a player like this. Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt, I have at 6.
Ooh.
So I was curious where you have him. Okay. So just to give you an idea, if you haven't watched him at all yet, have you seen anything with him at all?
I mean, when I've watched Vanderbilt, that's about it.
Okay. So I think my just kind of quick notes version is a good way to kind of just to throw him out here. I have at 6. I would have probably put him as high as 4, but there's just too many tight ends who are like actual tight ends. He is very much a true move tight end. Like, he played, I think, 77% of the snaps in the slot this year for Vanderbilt. He is a receiving weapon first and foremost, right? Like, that is his number one thing. And specifically, and I think there's a reason why, he's a dynamic athlete, in my opinion, in the open field. Like, what he does not move like someone who's 235 pounds. He's listed, I think, 6'4", 235. Wouldn't have guessed that watching him run.
Yeah, like ESPN is 6'4", 225. So
220. I think it's probably closer to that. I think PFF has listed 235 or 230, one of the two. But either way, he's certainly like a true like move space player. He's not going to give you anything in line as a blocker. Now he does try, like the effort's there, especially like when he's lined up outside or in the slot. Like, he can obviously block corners and stuff like that. He still has a size advantage on those guys, but you don't want him like he's not going to be lining up as a fullback and running out. Just like it's not something he's going to be doing as a blocker. But he's probably, at least in this group of players, right? Like everyone below him and even some of the guys right around that range, by far the most dynamic athlete in space and with the ball. Like, he can truly run. And there's a play against Alabama where they throw him kind of like a little shovel pass, and you can see the acceleration just takes off the line. And like that's what is most interesting for me, because I think he could be like an Evan Ingram, a Jonnu Smith type of player, where he's not going to be like an actual tight end for you most of the time. He's really going to be more of like a slot receiver and maybe an H-back type of thing. But I think he could be very productive in that role and could give you kind of like a third receiver level production in an offense that prioritizes someone like that.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming like a legitimate position at this point.
It is. Like, I think at this point you have to, because so many teams are having success doing that it gets to a point where, like, I understand, like, you have to have a true tight end in the offense in some way, but it doesn't have to be the number one tight end anymore. It doesn't have to be the guy that's, making the most money, playing the most snaps. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. Like, so many offenses are spread out in that way that, like, if you can at least block on the perimeter, like if they can throw you out in the slot and you can block a little bit there, they can live with that. Because in 11 personnel, if one of those guys can also be a guy that's really difficult matchup for the corner, that's helpful. It just is, right? Yeah. Like, that's what it comes down to, I think.
Yeah, I think the Raiders kind of figured that out with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. Because Mayer is a great, traditional tight end, but he doesn't need to be the big playmaker.
No, he can just kind of do his thing, and he isn't. Yeah, Bowers is the number one receiver, really, and Mayer can just do his thing, right? So I think that's, like, I'd love to see him go to a team that is missing that piece on offense and then has someone who can handle a lot of the inline duties, whether that's with another, guy like in this class, like a Haas or someone like that, or whether they already have somebody like that you can go grab. That would be a great fit. I think there's several teams I could see using this type of player. Honestly, if they didn't already have a bajillion tight ends, like, I'd love him on the Ravens, but likely already kind of does that type of thing. As much as I hate to say that now that I say it out loud. No, he's a very fun player, but I kind of couldn't really put him higher than 6, because I think Ferguson, although he might not be that type of player, I do think he's a more balanced player, and I feel like he deserves a spot higher. But in general, Stowers is going to be a fun player, I think, in the NFL. If he goes to the right team, I should say that. Which I don't know what team would draft him unless they plan to use him that way. So it's kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Any other guys
All
you
right.
wanted to talk about before we get in top 5?
No, I think that's it. We've covered everybody that I had notes on.
Okay, awesome. So we already know my 5th guy is Terrence Ferguson. I already talked about him plenty. Who is your number 5 then, Dalton?
So my number 5 is Luke Lockey out of Iowa.
Right. Someone I decided not to watch because of a lot of reasons. I just couldn't get to him at the end. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about him because I will definitely be watching him shortly after this.
So I get it. The Iowa offense is boring, and he is mostly used as a blocker because, their offense was
Caleb
give
Johnson.
the ball to Caleb Johnson.
Give the ball to Caleb Johnson.
Not a bad offense.
No, they won what, eight games? Did they win the bowl game? I don't think they won the bowl
7.
game.
They lost to Missouri in the bowl game.
Right. So I think it was like 8-5 or something, 7-6, whatever.
Because that's not a team you can run, give the ball to Caleb Johnson the whole game and expect to win.
Right. So
because the one thing they can do is play sound defense.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Luke Lockey, 6'6", 250. So you'll love the frame, and he is a tough blocker. Like, they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, and he did line up as the traditional inline tight end a lot. But he doesn't have to. Like, the thing is, like, if you wanted to split him out, he is athletic enough and good enough of a route runner to do that. He's just not super explosive. And the other concern is just you wonder, like, how much of a receiver he can be in the NFL just because he didn't have the production in college because Iowa doesn't throw the ball a lot. And when they do, it's to push the ball down the field to allow them
to
keep
create chunk plays. Yeah, try to create chunk plays. So
they're just trying to stretch the defense enough to keep giving the ball to Caleb Johnson.
Which, again, fair enough. If you're Iowa, probably best you can do. So,
but I mean, I think the potential on Lockey for an NFL team could really be unlocked. I could see him being a much more productive receiver in the NFL than he was in college. Just because I think the potential's there, just it wasn't necessary in their offense. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I have a 2nd-round grade on him.
I will definitely have to watch him shortly after this. But I will say with him, I wanted to watch him simply because it's an Iowa tight end, and we know what happens typically with Iowa tight ends. Now, I will say, obviously, there's been Iowa tight ends who haven't been the most productive in the passing game and gone on to be much more productive in the NFL. One comes to mind, which is George Kittle. Not saying Lockey's Kittle because I'm sure their athleticism is very different. Lifestyle is probably very different, but it's not something that would be out of the norm for this team in general who puts out so many great tight ends. Not all of them are necessarily statistically productive often because of the way the offense is typically run with Iowa. Not a lot of passing typically. And we've seen some seasons here or there where they've been able to produce. Like, obviously, you go back to Fant and Hawkinson as a duo. Those guys produced in the offense, but that was kind of the whole point of the offense, was to get the ball to those guys. Not so much with some of the other guys you see.
Yeah, I think Lockey, where you're going to see more production is in the red zone. Because Iowa, when they got down there, we're going to pound this thing right into the end zone.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see him get a lot more opportunities in the red zone, catching the ball. And I think that's where he is going to really shine because huge frame. Like, he's going to be able to high point the ball over a lot of guys.
Right. And that, honestly, that's kind of a big thing with obviously a guy that might not be the best athlete, like you said, but if he can kind of just tower over guys and embody them up and be a contested catch guy, that could be really helpful for an offense.
Yeah. And he knows how to run the routes. Like, that's the big thing, too. He's going to get into the right position. I think that's why I really like him.
Fair enough. I'll definitely have to watch him. So we'll move on to number 4 then. So my number 4 player, I'm curious if we had the same number 4 or not. Because I feel like there's the 2 guys that everyone talks about from an NFL standpoint. The guy that everyone talks about, of course, because of what he just did for a certain small school. And then there's the rest of the class is who kind of gets talked about the most. But I have Gunnar Helm at 4 from Texas.
Okay.
He's my number 4 tight end. Who do you have at number 4 before we get into it?
I have the small school guy, Harold Fanning Jr. at 4. I have Helm at 3.
Fair enough. I understand that. So I'll get into it first here with Helm, and then you can kind of bounce off and let me know how you feel. I understand kind of immediately probably why you have Fannin at 4 and Helm at 3. Helm is a real, true, like, do it all tight end. Like, I really think that there's nothing he can't do at the NFL level as a tight end. I struggle with his overall explosiveness. I feel like there's times where I see it and times where I don't. But in terms of his hands, fantastic. I think he's going to be really good in the red zone, especially at the next level. So he's a willing and capable blocker. He's full size tight end. Like, kind of, again, everything with him. He's just an upgraded version of some of the other guys that I talked about that I think have full skill sets at tight end. But I think he's just a better player in all facets there, and I think he has more ceiling there as well as a receiver, especially. So that's why ultimately it's above everyone else in this list, except for the top 3 guys I have. You let me know why you think he is also above my number 3 tight end, who is Harold Fannin, just to throw that out there. Yeah. So just have these guys flop. That's all.
So, yeah, to be fair, I have the same grade for both Helm and Fannin Jr. I had Lockie with a second-round grade. I have an early second grade on these two. So, like, I see him as more like top 45 picks.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's kind of like the difference there. But like so I have the same grade. I ranked Helm slightly higher just because I think he can play that traditional role a little bit more.
Which I get. Yeah.
Just because it's it's not necessarily a strength thing, it's the blocking technique. The blocking technique is so sound that he is like, especially if you're running a zone scheme, he's gonna come over and seal his zone against anybody. And that's really helpful. But man, the spectacular catches on his tape are just awesome.
The hands are awesome.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it does help. Like, I think a big difference between him and Fannin is like, there's just more tape against top competition. I think is a bigger thing. But I do think I think Fannin probably has a higher ceiling, and we'll talk about him more in a minute. But I really like everything that Helm brings to the table. I think he'd be the tight end 1 in a lot of classes.
I agree. That's kind of the thing, and I think ultimately when you're talking about these 2 guys in particular, because most people, except people who maybe are a huge fan of Fannin Jr. or maybe even a huge fan of Helm as well, the top 2 of this class are in any order you want, depending on what you value. And I'm sure our list is going to be maybe a little bit biased, but I don't think so. I do think he's just the best player at the position. Yeah. We'll get to those 2 in a second. But I think with Fannin Jr. especially, because we could talk about him in this section as well, since we already know that he's my 3 and your 4. I think with him, he to me is the ideal of, like, if you want a tight end to be a focal point of your offense, if you want a guy who's going to consistently catch the football, make plays after the catch, block as hard as he can. He's not going to ever be a great blocker, I don't think, but I think he does really try hard and is an effective blocker on the move, especially, and when he's playing in the slot, like kind of like a much better version of what I think Stowers showed at Vanderbilt is kind of where I view him as. Is like still an undersized tight end, but he has the effort, and I think he's strong enough to do it. It's just he's just undersized, right? He just has nothing you can really do about that. You're just gonna be smaller than some of these guys, but he does everything else as a receiver so well that I feel like, for example, I would love to see. Now, I hate to say this to you, Dalton, because I feel like you're gonna hate what I'm about to say to you. I think he would make an ideal Travis Kelce replacement for the Chiefs long term, because the nuance that he plays with, I think he'd be great with a quarterback like Mahomes, where they could kind of get on each other's pages, and just everything about the way he plays screams to me like he should be the go-to guy on like third downs, gotta have it downs. Because one, he might be able to make a play for you just as a tight end, which not many guys can do. More importantly, he's just so reliable in everything that he does. He had a contested catch percentage of almost 60% on 22 contested catches. And again, we talked about contested catches always aren't great, but he had 150 fucking targets. It's okay if you have 22 contested catches on 150 targets. Like, that's okay. I can live with that, especially when an offense is basically him or nothing a lot of the time. So I get that. But he just, everything with him as a receiver, the only thing, and people will point to this, is I don't think he's a particularly, I don't know if he's creative per se and has a ton of wiggle, but he's just so hard to tackle, it feels like. When you're watching him, like once he gets the ball, it feels like he just turns into a true like running back almost level of being able to break tackles and bounce off guys. Like he's just so good at that I'm not super worried about that being an issue. And his top speed also, I don't really know. I'm really curious how he runs. That's the best way I can describe it, because I feel like it's going to be plenty good enough. But I do wonder if he doesn't run well, do teams view him a little bit differently? Kind of like what almost happened to Isaiah Likely whenever, like talking about, we mentioned him earlier with the Ravens. He didn't run so well, but then you look at him in the NFL, it's like he runs away from dudes. Like he seems like he can do that just fine. So I'm curious what that ends up looking like for him too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with him is he like I want to see what the athleticism looks like on a field with a bunch of other NFL players.
Yes, that's going to be very curious. Because
now
I will say,
yeah,
I said Penn State. I want to throw that.
Yeah,
Penn State. He looked like he was plenty good in Penn State.
Full NFL players.
Yeah, so like there is that in his hat there.
Yeah. I do hope he plays. Is he? I don't think. I was just checking. I don't know if he's playing in like a Senior Bowl or anything like that.
I have to assume he was invited to one. I mean, he's definitely in one of the bowl. I don't know.
I would like him to play in that, just because I think that would alleviate a lot of concerns.
I'm curious. Now I need to double check that because I have to.
I was just looking on the news. I didn't see if he committed to.
Curious. Let's see. He declared obviously for the draft.
Yeah.
I don't think he. Yeah, I don't see anything of him accepting like an invite to anywhere or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming he'll be out of
just there. I think.
Okay.
Like a week ago, so
maybe that's why. But yeah, I do certainly hope he plays it. Ideally, the Senior Bowl. Obviously, I'm sure that they would love to have him, and if not, Shrine or something like that. But I imagine he'll at least be offered. I'm sure to be at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if he'll do it, but
I'd like to see him play in it because otherwise, I think the combine's going to be really big for him. Because that was my big concern. Because he is going to probably be more of an H-back or move tight end in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I do think like the athleticism, if you're going to like take him in with a top 40 pick, you want the athleticism to be really good. And I'm worried at the NFL level, it might just be like, okay.
That's ultimately the concern a little bit too, because it's really hard to tell sometimes with guys who play at a lower level of competition, because he dominated the hell out of the lower level competition in a way that almost no tight end ever does or has really. So it's hard to really hold that against him when he was so much better than his competition off it, and what he did to Penn State as well. Like he looked the part against the defense that is certainly one of the best in the country. So it's kind of hard to sit there and say like, oh, well, we don't know for sure, but we still don't really know for sure. And I think also, you look at some of the metrics, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say also it's worth noting, like, he did that, against Don DeLuca, not Kevin Winston Jr.
True. That does help for sure. I will say, too, something to keep in mind, and this kind of goes into the competition level a little bit, too, but it also shows, like, again, most of these I have to imagine were due to him just kind of out physicaling and, like, breaking tackles and stuff like that. And he also had far more, targets and catches than most tight ends, not named basically Tyler Warren. But 32 missed tackles forced, according to PFF, is almost double the next player, which is Tyler Warren at 18. So this dude clearly has the chops as far as being able to make plays in the open field once he has the football. And I think his yards after catch per reception was also near the top of the list as well. She's 7.5 yards after catch per reception is kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
Also, just again, some of the advanced metrics for him are so fun. Like I don't know if you've seen it or looked at it all, but what would you guess his yards per route run would be? Especially factoring like how many
per route run.
So it's just yards per on PFF. It's just yards per route run. So just amount of routes versus amount of yards he got.
I'm gonna say 8.6.
Okay, so to give you an idea of this, an elite level mark would be like above 2.5 yards per route.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just
My bad.
routes, remember? So it's
I'm
just a
thinking
number
like
of
yards per
routes.
reception. Yeah.
No, it's just routes. Yes, the total routes
Route run. Yeah, I'd say say 2.
3.76 yards per route run.
That's silly.
Which, again, for at least players with at least 50% of the targets that he got, is a full yard higher than anybody. And that one player within a yard of him, Tyler Warren, 2.76. It's basic. Like if you're looking at an overall like advanced metrics darling of a player, it doesn't get much
Just
better
get
than
the
what
ball
Harold
all the
Fanning
time
did.
to
Yeah,
do
just
that.
gets and also like for you to get the ball that much that you can still have a mark like that, because usually guys who are super efficient route runners, like guys who don't play all the time but get some big plays, they're usually guys at the top of those leaderboards, right?
Yeah.
This is stupid for a player to be able to do what he did. So again, no disrespect to Harold Fanning Jr. not having him up in the top, even 1 or 2 of this list. So there's some people who are going to want to put him there. It's just the top 2 guys are different though than the rest. So speaking of which, let's get into our final 2 here. I assume, unless you've had a change of heart, that Colston Loveland is going to be your number 2 tight end in this class.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again,
me as well.
He'd be number 1 going away in
most classes.
Other than this year and last year, he'd be number 1 going away.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing about this class, and it's as much as we like a lot of the guys we talked about today, the reason why this is potentially, like you said at the beginning of the show, a top 3 position group in this class, it's really a lot about these 2 guys in particular to me. Loveland, again, in most classes, we talk about a guy who's a slam dunk first round tight end, guy that, if one of your top 3 needs in the draft is a tight end and you're picking at 20, he's probably the best player on the board. Right, like that's kind of what we're talking about with a guy like him. We just happen to have another guy who is somehow even freakier and also able to play like 8 positions, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But let's focus on Loveland for now. I'll just kind of read from my scouting notes here. Big, fluid athlete with smooth movement skills. Ball skills are good despite a low contested catch percentage throughout his career. I think that's kind of weird because Michigan's quarterback situation is about as different as it could be last year to this year. It's kind of insane. Solid blocker who plays with a ton of effort, knows how to get open in scramble drill. I noticed that a lot too, which unfortunately didn't help him much because the quarterbacks just still would miss him a lot of the time. But make himself available as quarterback, and he will be only 21 during his rookie season, which is a big thing that some people are going to factor in when deciding like tight end 1, tight end 2 debates. But obviously I'm not too worried about that. But just throwing that out there, this is still a young player who's not even 21 yet. Really fun athlete, really fun player.
Yeah. I mean, he is the guy that you drafted and is going to be a traditional high-level franchise tight end.
Yes.
Do all the traditional tight end things, plus he's going to go and make some stuff happen after the catch, and he's going to make some big-time contested catches and win consistently one-on-one on his routes. No matter who's covering him, because the guy that's 6'5" and moves as well as him, it's going to be very hard to cover. Speed's pretty good for someone that big. I'm very curious to see what he runs. My only concern I had with him, and it's kind of one of the main reasons why he's probably one of the 2 main reasons why he's at 2 for me, is I'd like to see him add a little more girth to be able to hold up in line more.
Yeah. He's still a little. Yeah. The play strength is, I think, good. Right. It's good. It's just not great, which when you're talking about a full-time first-round tight end, you typically want a little bit more with that. But again, the way the league is going, all his other skills outweigh that ultimately, I think.
Yeah. My comp for him, I'm curious how you feel about this as both a Penn State guy and a Steelers guy. My comp is Pat Freiermuth for him. Now, and Freiermuth was also a guy that had to add a little more girth to be able to play on all 3 downs for the Steelers. But again, I think Loveland's a guy that's going to come in right away and be a 60 catch a year tight end for you, like for sure.
Fair enough. I think I would say that I think Loveland has a little bit more overall speed. Like I
Yeah, I
think
agree with that.
he's a little faster in a straight line. But I do think like as far as smooth movers go, not many smoother movers than Pat at tight end. They don't use it nearly well enough, but that's a discussion for another show and another
That's more
day.
of a quarterback issue than a
That's also fair, true. But point is that I definitely get that, especially with just the movement skills. The run after the catch, I think also when he gets to use it. I think
yeah,
Loveland needs to do a little bit better with that at times too. But again, it's hard to like if you look at his 2023 tape, his 2024 tape is still really good, but you get more opportunities that are good
yeah,
in 2023 with the ball. So that you showed a little bit more of that last year. So we'll see if that
yeah.
kind of comes back with better quarterback play. I think ultimately for him too, the floor for him in the draft is wherever the Chargers happen to be picking. That's the
Yep.
floor probably. Now he could go before then, obviously too, but especially if the Chargers win a playoff game or two. But we'll see about that. Point is I think that they're probably the floor, wherever they're at. I mean, obviously Harbaugh, the connection there with Michigan, but also they could use a player like this in their offense for sure. So that's he's to me very much a tight end that you draft in the first round, somewhere in the late teens on, and you'd be
Yep.
happy if that's what your offense needed, basically. So.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
And let's get into our number one tight end. Again, you could say bias. I cover Penn State. Dalton's a fan, whatever. But also, too bad. Tyler Warren's number one tight end in the class for me, as he is for you. Um, again, I've mentioned this before on this show and other shows. It'd be easier to name positions Tyler Warren hasn't played for Penn State this year at different times and doing different things. The versatility, the explosiveness, despite being a full-size tight end at 260 pounds, still cannot believe he's 260. However, when I went to see a game this year, boy, did he look 260. I'll tell you what, that weight's correct. If anything, it might be short selling him a little bit.
Yeah.
That dude's big. And when he has the ball in his hands, it's scary how well he moves. It's kind of insane. I mean, the ball skills are improved from last year, not dropping the ball as much. Just, again, I don't know how much of the versatility stuff we saw at Penn State is going to ultimately make its way to the NFL level because most guys are not insane enough to do the stuff that Kodoniki does for Penn State with him. But it's in there. It's something teams have to think about. Like if he lines up a quarterback, they have to prepare for him to throw a pass. Like that's just funny to me, just to be able to do that. He's again, we know this as well as anybody, but he's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, line up at center at one point
and caught a touchdown over a dude in the end zone against you. It's so stupid.
Yeah, I mean
that's like that play. I remember him like, no, but
like.
It's just not supposed to even be an option to do. I didn't even know it was an option to do until he did it. I'm like, wait, didn't he snap the ball? And then I see him catch the touchdown. I'm like, what just happened exactly? And then I'm like, oh my God, they really did. So funny.
Yeah, he's so much fun in like what he can, and like he's so athletic, and just the way he dominates the 50-50 balls with his strength, but also has such great size and body control. Like you can tell he was a basketball player.
Yes.
Also want to alleviate a couple concerns. The two big concerns are like age and the lack of production before this year. The thing that people I think are forgetting is that he is a converted quarterback.
Yes, he was a quarterback in high school. So.
And so you have that. And then also when he got to Penn State, there were 3 NFL tight ends ahead of him on the depth chart in Freiermuth, Strange, and Johnson. Like it's just, it takes time to work your way up when you're learning a brand new position.
Yeah. And in a passing game that has been, let's just say, a little lackluster at times, to say the least, prior to this year, and even to some degree this year at times outside of him. So it's the production thing, I wrote about it actually prior to the season where I was like, I think that bringing Kodoniki is pretty much the best thing that could have possibly happened for Tyler Warren and for Penn State from a production standpoint. Because I'm like, this is a guy who has consistently said, who's my best player? All right, let's figure out how to get him the football. And to me, going into the season, obviously outside, like the running backs are obviously very good, but like as far as receivers go, I'm like, nobody touches Tyler Warren talent-wise on this team right now. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. So I expected him to be the focal point. And now, am I saying that I expected this? No. I think my prediction in the season was like 750 yards, like 8 touchdowns. He cleared that by a little bit. So
a little bit.
I think I had like 60 catches for like 750 and like 8 touchdowns is my prediction. He may have overshot that a little bit, but it was like double his production from the year before. So I thought it was being reasonable. I'm like, he's still be good. He blew out my expectations somehow, despite like wanting to double his numbers. So in general, like nothing could have been much better for him than it has been this year. Like this is about as perfect as it gets for a guy going into the NFL. And I have no doubts in my mind that whoever drafts him will be very happy to get the player that they get.
Yeah, and like the big reason why he can line up anywhere and do so much high football IQ.
Yes,
like
unbelievably high football IQ.
Like that's why I keep getting like Bowers comparisons for him, because again he's just someone that has such good instincts that you can line him up wherever, put the ball in his hands, make plays happen. And as a receiver, something that like a guy like him you need to be able to do is have that feel for the gaps in zone coverage. And he recognizes it and sits so well in those zones. And then once he gets the ball in his hands, he's a problem. I mean, it's just a runaway train. And
that's the thing about him. Like he is different than a lot of the like. There's players in this class that I think are really good after the catch. The problem with Tyler is that if he gets the ball in space and has the chance to get up to speed, especially, which he does faster than he should be able to, but when he does get up to speed, nobody wants to tackle that.
No.
Like so I got to see him live. Like I do have that experience, and like he just looks different than the rest of the dudes out there. Like I was at Maryland, so Maryland's not this insane team or anything like that, but like they have plenty of the D1. These are D1 athletes, right? They did not look interested in tackling Tyler Warren. Like it just didn't. Like there's not one of those days that they're interested in. And I don't blame them.
Different.
Yeah,
because like I'll give an example of this because I was thinking about this watching the Raiders yesterday, watching Brock Bowers going up against Derwin James, and there were some plays where like James gripped him up because James is a big physical safety, very similar size. And on a 50-50 ball, I don't think Derwin James has any shot against Tyler Warren. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, he's gonna be a fun piece for whoever adds him. And speaking of which, now that we've covered our tight ends in the tight end class here, let's jump into it. So we're gonna do our second mock draft with just the two of us. So it'll be a little faster, a little bit easier. Do you want, before I pull it up here and get started, because now that the draft order is finalized, Raiders are picking 8th. Unfortunately,
6th.
As we talked about. Oh, was it 6th? I thought it was 8th. Is it 6th? Is it 6th?
They were 8th when I was writing. They were 8th up until Sunday. And they
because the Panthers and Jets, Okay, so 6. So it's still same question then. Would you like odds or evens?
I'll go evens.
Okay, so you get to pick for the Raiders here. So we're going to jump into this here in just a second. Let me pull that up. But yeah, we're going to be doing our first mock draft since the final order, at least for the first 18 teams. Of course, we have the playoffs to get through, and we'll have the final draft order after the Super Bowl. But let's jump into it. So I'll be doing odds. So the Titans now have the first pick, which, Giants fans, I'm sorry that Drew Luck had that one game, dude. That's crazy. That's kind of, I mean, fun game to watch for them, I'm sure. But in the back of their minds are probably like, ooh. And the Patriots too. Joe Milton, of all people, against the Bills backups. I know, but still. Hey, the sad part is Milton's probably like, man, I may have solidified myself as the long-term backup. Like I might have a job for a long time in the NFL. And then the fans probably hate him for doing it. They're probably like, man, why couldn't you just make like one or two more mistakes in that game? We lose to the Bills backups. Like, what the heck, man? It's so funny, honestly, probably for Patriots fans. Also, R.I.P. Gerard Mayo. Didn't think they were going to do it, but I kind of get it at the same time. Like, I don't know. That's, again, another show. But
this does create one of the more fun number 1 overall pick scenarios with the Titans because what do you do? Do you abandon Will Levis after 2 years just because the bad is so bad? Or do you think he's going to grow and just take the best player available in Travis Hunter here?
That is my question that I have to answer now. If I'm the one answering the question, which in this case I am, listen, Levis has some good things about him. He does, right? You know, he has a big arm, athletic player. You know, he's willing to take chances. You know, that could be also a negative thing as well, of course. And when I say it could be, I mean that it is more often than not.
But that last throw at the end
That
of the
last
game.
throw, if that's the last throw of his Titans career, what a throw it was.
What a throw.
And good for him, man. Also, he was so happy for Calvin Ridley to get 1,000 yards and get his money. You love that also. You know, good teammate, I'm sure. But yeah, like at the end of the day, he's not my quarterback. I'm going to tell you that much. Not even because of the Mayo thing. It's part of it. I'm not going to lie to you. Every time I see that damn commercial, I'm like, as someone who's not a Mayo guy in general, pisses me off, frankly. But hey, get your money. You know, you're going to need it potentially. But anyway, if I'm the Titans, now, do I love Sanders as the first pick in the draft in a normal class? Not really. I do like him as a quarterback. We talked about he is my number one quarterback. He's also your number one quarterback. But at some point, if you're the Titans, though, too, right? Levis is, to me, clearly not the answer. I just don't think he has enough. There's not enough there for me to be confident that he's ever going to bounce out and be an actual, like, week-to-week starting quarterback, right? I'm getting a lot of Jameis vibes, right? Yeah, he's just a lot of Jameis vibes. Like, he is the spiritual successor to him, even though Jameis is still out there slinging it for a while there before whatever happened to him happened. And maybe we'll see it next year too. I don't know. But the point is he's too much like that, right? And yes, would I love to have more Will Levis memes next year? Yes, would love that. Still, the best one was the hands on the head, on his knees, on the interception touchdown the first week of the season. Funniest image from the season. So fun. But I think this needs to be done, and we'll jump into the draft here. I do think that as great as Travis Hunter is, and he would be a really good piece for this team, if they like Sanders enough, and like, again, I kind of sway back and forth of whether I like him enough in the situation, but I think he has the type of skills that they need at the quarterback position for this offense. A guy coming from the Bengals with head coach Callahan, where I'm not saying Sanders is Burrow by any means, but I think that he can do some of that type of stuff as a pocket passer for him. And I think that's what he's looking for, most likely. So to me, Sanders is a good fit in general. So I am going to, and I'll pull him up here because, again, he's ranked 41st in this right now, which I think is funny. Sanders will be the first pick of the draft, which brings the Browns up at pick number 2. Now, Dalton, you have a fun conundrum here. Especially considering they're probably going to try to exercise some sort of like insurance policy on Watson because he's apparently had a setback in his Achilles, which couldn't happen to a better guy. Let me tell you what. That's all I'm
maybe
saying
they
about
just need
that.
to massage it a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe he just needs a little bit more physical therapy. But we'll see about that. But do you take a swing with the second pick in the draft that you have in your hands, or do you do something else?
I don't have this high of a grade on him. I think similar to like what you were doing with Sanders, but
yes,
they need a quarterback. And ironically, I think Cam Ward gives you a lot of the same things that you thought you were going to get in Deshaun Watson, but just younger and not as
gross.
Yeah.
Is the
but also like
on and off the field,
not the same player he was, no. And like I think part of it is, I mean, there's those rumors that O'Brien basically ran Clemson's offense because he just won't learn an NFL offense, which I do think is similar concerns you're going to have with Ward, where I don't know how much timing you're going to be able to have in an offense with him. But if you are just like, we're just going to have this talented player to go out there and create, and we'll just make it work, I think Ward could do that for you. I think he has a lot of the same traits as Watson, but will actually like do things. Whereas Watson
Correct.
just kind of sat there and watched the play develop and then just got killed a lot.
True. I see the logic here. Now, me personally, this is just my guess, right? By the way, is that going to be your pick here then?
Yeah, it's gonna be Ward here.
Yeah. So my prediction is that if they were to do this, right, that it is going to be an unmitigated disaster because Cam Ward is as talented as he is, right? to me, he does feel like he's going to end up just getting himself killed in Cleveland trying to play the way that he plays.
Absolutely.
And would that in some ways be beneficial to me? Sure. You see the logo on my hat. But I also want to see Cam Ward succeed because he's really fun to watch. So to me, I'm like, I don't love it, but I also get it. You have the second pick in the draft. You don't get it very often. Even if you're the Browns recently, they haven't been terrible this often in the last 4 or 5 years. So if you like the quarterback enough, which they might, we don't know, then I think you have to take him. But if you don't, which is probably the right decision, by the way, I get not taking the quarterback. But I also appreciate the swing because, again, you don't know how many times you're going to have the opportunity to do that. And with Watson on the team, you can't really go and pay a veteran to be actually good. You can get a veteran to be there and sort of do stuff, but you're not paying somebody $50 million for agency.
I mean, ideally for Ward, the best thing that can happen is the Browns just take Hunter at 2. The Giants don't draft him because of reasons. He doesn't look like a Giants quarterback.
Does not look like one. Doesn't look like one, unfortunately for him, according to ownership.
And then he slides down to the Raiders at 6. I think that actually wouldn't be a bad fit because of the weapons they do have.
Right.
I think he could get used to playing in time because 89 is going to be open, or 89 or 16 is going to be open most of the time pretty quickly.
That's just true. Yeah, that would be a really good fit, I think, for him. But I don't see it happening, unfortunately, because Aiden O'Connell had to go ahead and do stuff. Which was that about?
They had to go and beat 2 bad teams with backup quarterbacks.
True. Which
they beat Mac Jones and Spencer Rattler.
Hey, those are guys who play quarterback. The Giants at number 3. They kind of get saved in this situation, I think, because I think either one, they're not taking the 2 top quarterbacks most likely, right? For not for football reasons necessarily, but that's beside the point. I'm not going to take Kyle McCord here, of course, because that'd be crazy. I wouldn't do that. Now with the Giants, I don't know. He sure looks the part, doesn't he, Dalton?
I'll say this: if Drew Aller did come out, he's going 3 overall. Giants.
Probably, because man, if there's not a Giants-looking quarterback in this draft potentially, that's Drew Aller, man. Tell you what, he has everything: the arm, the anyway, number the pigment, yes, that's there you go. Anyway,
let's just say it.
Yeah, we everyone knows what we're talking about. I'm gonna go ahead and run the card in for Travis Hunter because they need help in every way. And Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter on the field on 3rd down, that's fun. Let's do it. Travis Hunter here at 3. Patriots, who Joe Milton their way to the 4th pick in the draft somehow, very fun. They have an interesting problem, which is that kind of their entire offense is bad except for the quarterback and the running back. So you can kind of go anywhere here. We've talked about how we're not super big fan of Ted McMillan, although many are. You could go defense here, but weapons are obviously a big issue. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, weapons are an issue, but you gotta protect Drake May.
Yes, I think you can attack weaponry in free agency too. So,
and while there isn't necessarily a franchise left tackle here, I think and it's a little high here, but I think you can draft Will Campbell and just plug him in somewhere on this offensive line, and the offensive line's better, and Drake May is going to get hit less. So I'm just going to go and grab Will Campbell here for the Patriots. They are several years away from contending, and this is a guy that is going to be on the team long term and be productive for a decade. So I'm good with just taking the best offensive lineman available.
Right, I probably would think about Kelvin Banks here personally, but again, we have to get to the tackles before I really settle that in. But like you said, Campbell's going to play somewhere and start for you on the line. And I think with a team like the Patriots, who clearly have a need at pretty much every spot, basically, it's helpful to take somebody who could potentially fill multiple spots, right? And if he fails a tackle, he could be a guard. If he's really good at guard, but you need a tackle for a week, we could probably obviously go out and do that. So I think realistically, that's probably the right fit for them if you're going to take a tackle or just a lineman in general right here. Jaguars up here now. It's kind of a similar thing. Like I'd like to add talent along the offensive line as well. Corner is obviously also a huge need, especially opposite Campbell. And we have a really good one sitting here too. So I think honestly, I feel like I wonder if Johnson's going to end up kind of getting underrated in this class, ultimately because of Hunter being there as kind of the do it all, two-way player and also primarily a corner for most people. And the fact that he kind of like Michigan season obviously was like, whatever. Outside of the Ohio State game, obviously was pretty great for them, but outside of that, really wasn't anything special. But he's really good, man. I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and take him, add him to that room. That defense kind of came on down the stretch, and the offense needs a lot of help. But they have pieces on offense. If they can just kind of figure that out and have Trevor play better, I think that team could get good fast if they make the right hire coach, especially too. Balky being there does kind of stunt that potential, though. Unfortunately, sorry for Jaguars fans out there. But now you got your Raiders up here, and I have a feeling I know where you're going to go, Dalton. But you let me know what you're thinking here.
But
maybe.
So like I was saying before the show, I did mock Genty when the Raiders were picking at 8, but
there's more talent on the board than.
There's a little more talent on the board, and I think the Telesco model has been very clearly like best player available.
Yep.
And to me, the best player available is Abdul Carter. Here, okay. He's the only guy left here that I have a top 5 grade on. Right. So I'm grabbing Carter here, and I know the Raiders like Malcolm Kuntz a lot, but he is a restricted free agent this year. He's also coming off a major injury. You could still rotate him in, or you could take the compensatory pick for him and just roll with Carter and Kayvon Chasen as your third guy, who's played really well down the stretch for them as well.
Yeah, he's actually not been bad.
But, I mean, you get a chance to put Abdul Carter, Christian Wilkins, and Max Crosby on your front 4. I mean, shit, like you're
it's tough. I mean, I was gonna say I was wondering if you're gonna say him or Graham, but either way, that's a disgusting front 4.
So
I know you're not as high on. I know. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so Adam Butler's kind of the other guy that can go alongside Wilkins. They also might bring John Jenkins back to be that bigger body on the line. Right. So I think Carter makes a little more sense here. Because that first step is incredible. I mean, you would create pass rush problems for teams, and if the board looks like this, Aiden O'Connell's probably the quarterback next year. Yeah, which if that's going to be the case, you need to have, and you want to win, and you want to have any shot at a wild card spot, you need to have an elite defense, and this will do it.
Fair enough. I do think the Raiders, because they're at 6, you're going to either have to go a route like this, you're going to have to trade up, or you're going to have to hope that the Vikings, for some reason, don't bring back Sam Darnold in any capacity, or at least bring him back on something that's meant to be traded, like a franchise tag and trade situation. Because I am a little bit concerned about Darnold outside of Minnesota, obviously, because of his past history. But I do see legitimate improvements that I think he's made to his game that would make him at least a good starting quarterback for a lot of teams. Not sure if the Raiders would be one of those, but that's probably the biggest fish they could potentially go after if they can't get a quarterback.
I'm very curious if how much of an upgrade he'd be over O'Connell in another offense.
Because it's another offense, that's the problem. I think it matters also too. Have we heard what the coaching situation is for the Raiders at this point? Have they said anything?
So they have not made an official. They trotted Pierce out there today for a press conference.
Okay,
he has not been fired yet.
Gotcha.
It seems like he's going to be available, but it seems like he's going to be the guy. But Mark Davis is also a very fickle person.
Yeah, I
And
just wonder.
as far as the offensive coaching staff goes, they do have to they can't just give the job to Scott Turner because he was the interim.
Yeah,
So they do
they
have
have
to,
to
because of the Rooney
interview.
rule, they have to go
Yeah,
through a hiring process. And I also don't know if Turner's going to win the job in an actual interviews because, I mean, it was okay, but there was also a lot I didn't like. And, I mean, still wasn't a good offense. And he's
no, but
it's North Turner's offense.
it is.
Like
Yes, of course. Yeah, Norv just sitting there. Hey, we're doing this. He's like, all right, cool.
he's literally sitting right
Um,
next to him in the press box.
I know. Yeah, I've seen it. It's
Dad's
very
holding
funny.
his
I'm like,
hand. Yeah,
quite
it's
literally.
really
Yeah, and then
silly.
I saw a clip of them talking about how Norv will say stuff in meetings, and then Scott has to be like, "This is what he's talking about," because the players don't know what the hell he's talking about. It's very funny. It's a whole thing. But the Raiders they're the Raiders. We know this. They do silly stuff, so it's fun. But yeah, I'm curious how that goes. But I do understand going Carter here with the board the way it is for sure. Get that. But this is going to be the first indication that we're clearly in charge of this board, because I have a very fun pick for the Jets, because let's be honest, right? They're not taking quarterback here at 7 with the guys gone. We don't know what Aaron Rodgers' future is. I like to hope that it's in a tree somewhere in the woods, smoking something that I don't know what it's called and hanging out the rest of his time. I kind of think that's what he should do. He threw his 500th touchdown. Whoop-de-doo, awesome. You can go ahead and leave. That's probably what I would do if I was him. So you're probably rocking with some combination of Terod Taylor, who's still under contract, and maybe you draft somebody later in the draft as a developmental guy. Granted, you did do that with the Florida State kid last year, but what's that mean? I don't really know if that matters at all.
Who did they take last year?
I can't think of his name right now. He was starting for. It was just no the starter for Florida State when they were 13-0 or whatever it was before he got hurt.
That kid.
Can't think of his name right now for some reason,
I
but
can't either.
He was decent player.
Yeah.
Point is, I don't think that matters. Well, I'd probably still look for someone to develop or something like that. But to me, they didn't do this in the past draft. But I do think hopefully if Fashanu gets back to full health, I know he had the injury. That was an excellent pick. He looked fantastic when he was slotted in at left tackle. But now they get their weapon. I'm taking Tyler Warren at 7 to the Jets.
Love it. I was really hoping you'd do that.
Yeah, I really think that this would be very helpful to them long term, because when you get a piece for the whoever the quarterback's going to be long term. Devontae Adams, I don't know what his situation is going to be. Garrett Wilson seems kind of iffy even too. Not from a player perspective, but I've heard some rumors that he may want to move on. A lot of stuff's going on with the Jets. This to me would be kind of the calming presence for an offense that's going to potentially need one, and also really just great player, right, to slot in there. So.
Yeah. Also, Tyler Warren and the Wildcat might be their best option at quarterback.
Might be potentially. Yeah, just 2008 Miami Dolphins it up, man. Just Terod Taylor could throw 12 passes game. It's probably going to be 10 of them are probably going to be pretty good, so you're good there. Whatever. So,
but also Taylor, you can line up Breece Hall, Warren, Taylor all back there at the same time. Do some of the weird stuff that.
Oh, sure.
Penn State did.
Absolutely good. Yeah, why not? Yeah. So that'd be very fun.
You have to get really weird with it if that's going to be your offense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now again, is Tyler Warren going at number 7? Almost assuredly not. But I would do it. I think it'd be fun for the Jets.
I don't know.
Why not?
I think the Bowers. I think Bowers falling to 13 last year. I think showed GMs we should probably just go and grab.
You would think. Would think. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see how that plays out.
I've seen him go a lot. He's been getting mocked a lot to the Colts in the teens, which I think
that makes a lot of sense.
Really funny.
It would be very funny. Bowers, though, was getting mocked to the Colts a lot this past year too, so that makes sense why teams are doing that, or why people are doing that. So, but Panthers up at 8 here now. Where are you thinking with them?
So Panthers at 8. They need a lot of help.
They do. Defensively, especially, the offense clearly got, the quarterback need. I think we can just go ahead and not worry about anymore, at least for another year. Young played much better down the stretch, had a 5-touchdown finale. It was really awesome. Love to see it. But receiver is still there's a hodgepodge of guys that have all played well. but edge line, like pretty much the whole defense needs overhaul.
And
so you can really go anywhere.
I'm seeing edge and linebacker there. They just need talent that can find the football and get after the quarterback as well. So we're going to give, if Abdul Carter's off the board here, we're going to get the next closest thing here. We're going to grab Jalen Walker.
That's what I was kind of thinking too, that just super talented player, could do a lot of different things for them defensively. Helps out kind of the whole front seven. Like, I think that would be really helpful because, linebacker this year has been weird for them, and also edge rusher is just not good enough in any capacity.
And I don't know which one Walker's going to play in the NFL.
I think he's going to play at least, my guess is he's going to play at least 70% of his reps as a true rusher. To me, is probably what I would do with him.
Agree.
And then you can kind of maybe do some creative stuff with him at the true linebacker spot occasionally too. Maybe you blitz him from a true linebacker spot. Maybe you spot drop him. Maybe you have him just with his speed. He can run with guys in coverage. Honestly, if it's man coverage assignments, do a lot of different things with him. So that should be very fun for them if they were able to get that. Pick number 9 now for me with the Saints. Mason Graham's sitting here on the board at 9, and I think I'm a little bit higher on him than maybe you are, Dalton, but I just think he does everything very, very well, and there's really not any true holes in his game to me. And the Saints need a lot of help, but defensive line is still one of them. Maybe playing next to Brzee will help him a little bit too, because he hasn't really done a whole lot as far as I've seen since they drafted him, so it could help him in the interior. So I'm going to go ahead and take Mason Graham from Michigan here. Bears at 10. What do you think of the Bears here?
So I think I'm going to do what the Bears probably should have done last year. Instead, they decided to add another receiver in Odunze. They need offensive line help. They need it really, really badly. And I think I'm going to go with Kelvin Banks here, just because they need an offensive lineman. Whether Banks stays a tackle or moves inside, whatever, they need help.
They do, for sure. They with Williams this year, it's been really hard to watch him because I do think some of it, certainly, and a big portion of it is on him in a lot of ways, but they need to find a way to settle him down, and the best way to do that with a young quarterback, allow him to trust his protection. You saw what Bryce Young was able to do when he reset himself in the middle of the season and was able to actually trust what he was seeing and allow his offensive line to play well in front of him, how much better he looked as an NFL quarterback. Now, obviously, Williams is way more physically gifted, way more ability to thrive even in a non-perfect situation than Young, but you still need to trust what you're seeing and trust that your protection is going to hold up. He does not play like that right now. They need to kind of settle that down. So I definitely like that pick. Niners at 11. It's weird seeing the Niners at pick 11. It just kind of is. But it's for them because now I've never been a huge Purdy guy. I do think I've starting to come around to him as a true legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL over the past 2 years. But if they're going to pay him, it's going to be a whole lot of money, and their weaponry is only getting older and worse. Ayuk is coming off of injury. Debo does not look the same. We don't know what McCaffrey's future is going to look like. Kittle is getting only older. Not that he's not any good or anything like that anymore. Still a great player, but how much longer is he going to be a great player? Just so many questions across the board. When you draft Pearsall last year, he showed up in the last couple of games, started to look like he actually can play, which love that because was a big fan of his. But I think you could consider receiver at this point just to add to that room for the future. The offensive line is kind of a mess outside of Trent Williams when he plays. So that could definitely be a huge thing. It's tough. And also corner might be a huge need because apparently, and for good reason, Travarius Ward may not return to the Niners, not necessarily anything to do with the team, but his personal tragedy with his daughter. Apparently he has trouble being in California right now. It's kind of traumatic for him. So he may look to move on regardless. There's a lot of potential needs for this team. And for a team that still was going to have Super Bowl aspirations next year moving forward, it's kind of tough to fill all the holes at the same time. So for me, I think because they're probably going to ultimately pay Purdy, I think it's important to keep the weaponry as good as it can be. That's kind of my number one priority if that's the direction they're going to go. And to me, the best fit here would actually be Luther Burden from Missouri. Now,
like
he's not Deebo Samuel, but he can do a lot of Deebo Samuel things, right? He's not this traditional like outside like X receiver. He kind of does a little bit of everything. Can play from the slot. He is well built for a player his size. Like I think that he would be able to do some of that stuff and at least offer some of that explosiveness that they haven't been getting from Samuel this year and may not get anymore. So
I like that pick.
Man, I wonder who the Cowboys are going to take, Dalton. Do you think the
On-
Cowboys might take somebody here
Yeah.
in particular?
On the Purdy thing, though, real quick,
Yes.
mention it. I cannot wait till we do our NFC South or our NFC West 3-round mock. When we get to round 3, I have a comp.
Oh, okay.
Purdy that I think they could replace. There's a guy that they get in late round 3 that I think they could replace Purdy with, and not have that much of a drop off. But we'll talk about that later.
I have a feeling I know what direction you're going. We'll get to there later on. Anyway, very good point.
This is the pick that I think kills Jerry Jones. I think he gets so excited that this guy's on the board. And he literally just dies of a heart attack. I think this pick would literally kill him. I think all the blood would immediately rush to his head.
It's just over. It's just immediately over.
He'd be gone. Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty's the pick here. I mean,
what to talk about generational run of running back picks if
he's still on the board at 8, they're probably trading up for him.
Probably, yeah. They're definitely calling like Panthers like, hey, you need so many players. Why don't we give you a pick or two? Let's work this out. And Panthers like, well, what if we just draft them and have 3 running backs we're investing in for some reason? And they're like, no, just give us the pick, please. Jerry's gonna fucking die if you don't. Like, this is a man's life we're talking about.
They trade one of their defensive they trade
Micah Parsons the 8th pick.
Yeah, or
keep the 12th pick.
They still have DeMarcus Lawrence, right?
Yeah, I think he's under contract still, yeah.
They trade him to move up from 12 to 8.
That'd be really funny, yeah. No, but this is if this pick doesn't happen, it's only because someone else was like, we want him more than Cowboys want him. That's pretty much the only thing stopping this pick from taking place. Moving on to the Dolphins here. Man, the Dolphins are if you just watched or if you just read the Around the Block group chat, Dolphins fans are in disarray. Just absolutely devastated. Not only because of the season they just had, but because everyone's coming back. the whole shebang is coming back, except potentially maybe not Tyreek Hill and maybe not Jalen Ramsey, because they seem not interested anymore, which is a thing that they have to figure out. I'm not going to factor that in too much into my pick because we don't know what's going to happen with that. But let's just say they need a lot of help, particularly all along the offensive line, which there is somebody that I think would be a good replacement long-term for or really for this, if he even plays at all anymore, potentially when he does play the 4 games he plays with Teron Armstead. The more I watched, and I haven't gotten into the tackle class fully yet, but I really like the potential of Ursery out of Minnesota. I think he'd be a really good fit for them. You could look at Josh Simmons, who I haven't watched yet, so I'm not going to throw him in here. Wyatt Milne, I think, is really good. Cameron Williams out of Texas has a lot of potential, but to me, they need somebody quickly who can help them, and I think Ursery is a really good fit for that, so I'm going to take him here.
I like that pick a lot.
So they need more. They need more dudes who played in Minnesota. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
If they played in that part of the country, they need more of that. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. And also you just can't have Tua's head bouncing off the ground all the time.
You cannot do it anymore. You just simply, I will not. If I have to watch another Dolphins game where Tua takes a hit and then he doesn't immediately stand up, I'm gonna lose my mind. It freaks me out every time it happens. I don't like it. Stop it. Do something about it, Chris Greer, please. And we know instead he's gonna draft I don't know, whoever has the highest 40 time at receiver at this pick or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know, but please take an offensive lineman. Anyway.
So we talked about tight ends getting mocked to the Colts here.
Yeah.
And, Anthony Richardson, especially on the shorter stuff, he tends to miss a lot.
A little bit.
And, you hope he can get more accurate. But until then, a great solution to this is just grab a guy that's really big and can catch a lot of stuff. So we're gonna go with Colston Loveland here.
Okay, I'm totally cool with
You
that.
need a tight end because you're gonna have to run the ball a lot in this offense, and as far as guys that are gonna catch passes, you just need someone that's really long and can catch the ball when it goes 10 feet over his head.
Absolutely, I agree. The Colts offense is one of the offenses in NFL history. Let me put it that way. The Falcons here at 15. I think Scorton is where I'm going to go here. I think they need somebody who has the ability to actually win one-on-one, and I think Scorton with his power profile can do that for them. They just do not have enough pass rush consistently. They have to do so many weird things on defense to get pressure. I think this helps them a lot. And Scorton, again, just feels like a really, I don't want to call him just a floor player necessarily, because I think he does have a ceiling to him because of his size and his power. But I have a hard time thinking he's going to be bad at the next level because of that power profile. Like, those guys to me just feel like they have a higher hit rate in terms of being able to affect the quarterback. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to add a player like this to a defensive line that really needs it. So Cardinals pick 16 here. What are you thinking?
So a couple options here. I mean, I don't like the tackles here. I just don't think that
it's getting a little bit
grab any of these guys that high. They need to get that. They need to add to that front seven. And I think they need just guys that can get to the quarterback. And so I'm kind of between Pierce or Michael Williams, but I think I'm gonna have to go with Michael Williams here because he's a guy that you can put pretty much anywhere.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the key thing with him. They just need somebody with some juice. They really just don't have the juice at pass rusher right now. They have guys who, they've been able to patchwork together some good games and some good, honestly, seasons over the past year. Being able to rush the passer. Right, but if you give him somebody who can, actually just be better than the dude in front of him a lot of the time, potentially, that's super helpful. Now, I didn't plan this, by the way, but we have somebody staring us at the board who we're not quite as high on, and that's why they're still on the board here. But this makes a lot of sense if you're the Bengals and you don't even want to pay the best receiver on your team that much, clearly, because you haven't done it yet. I don't know if I just don't believe they're going to pay two of them, frankly. I don't care that Joe Burrow throws for 1 billion yards when they play together. I don't care that the offense was so good that they almost were able to overcome the fact that they're not good anywhere else. I think that Higgins is in some shape or form gone either this year or in this offseason or very shortly after. So if you're losing one big, tall possession type receiver, why not add another one? Ted McMillan sitting here at 17, I think, is good value at this point. And he replicates some of the stuff. I think Higgins is a better player, obviously, but obviously, had time to develop in the NFL. So maybe Ted can do similar things. We're going to go.
Yeah. I get the defense is terrible, but
there is no draft pick that can make it 17 that's solving that problem. Let me tell you what.
How many points is Kenneth Grant going to shave a game?
Not enough.
Not enough.
So Malachi Stark's a great player, not shaving enough points. Yeah.
You need to keep scoring. And Ted with Joe Burrow will do that because I think that's an offense where Ted's going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Seahawks now at 18. What do you got?
Oh man. This is really where we do start scraping the bottom of the barrel. Again, I'm just kind of looking at talent here. I think we're gonna go Pierce here.
Okay, add some more pass rush use. So, I get that for sure. One of the things I wanted to mention is this is from someone who's watched enough Seahawks games. I think I would take. I don't care who the hell the tackle is on the board. I'm taking one of them because if Abe Lucas can't play right tackle for them next year, they cannot roll out who they've been rolling out at right tackle this year. It was about as much of a liability as any other position in the NFL at right tackle spot this year. It was truly horrendous. So to me, I would probably just, even if I didn't love it, I'd probably take a tackle. But I get Pierce is obviously more talented than some of the guys on the board to tackle. But Seahawks fans that feel would be we're going to jump off a bridge now.
And in all fairness, I haven't gotten too far into like Simmons and Milam yet.
Me either.
So,
Yeah.
like,
So I mean, Milam
feel
I'm pretty
really good
familiar
about
with,
taking
but
him.
yeah. I
Yeah.
get that too. That's kind of part of the problem with where we're at too in the process. So that makes sense. Texans here, number 19. I wish there was a guard that I loved enough to take here because boy, do they fucking need a guard, man. Like this team's interior offensive line is again maybe the second biggest liability in all of the NFL and all along the offensive line, other than the right tackle spot for the Seahawks. Problem is the Seahawks already don't have to deal with it anymore because they're not in the playoffs, while the Texans have to go play or the Chargers have to go into Texans Stadium, but they are one of the best blitzing teams, the Chargers, and the Texans are like the worst at picking up the blitz. Not a great matchup. So I'm expecting that game to not go so well for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're picking exactly where they're picking right now. But I don't love the interior players. I could see one of these guys, but these guys to me are tackles ultimately, and that's not really their biggest problem at all. To me, I'm also kind of going talent with this team, especially defensively with the Texans, because I think they've been good defensively this year, but still not as dominant as I think people were expecting D'Amico Ryan's defense to be 2 years in, ultimately. And I think they could use some help in the secondary and the back end, especially safety. Stark's still sitting here. I have no problem taking Malachi Starks at 19.
No,
That's
I don't
kind
either.
of a good value for me at this point.
That's a
So
steal. I think I'm gonna have probably a top 10 grade on him.
yeah,
When it's all said and
he's
done, that's where I'm
super
at.
talented.
Yeah.
So now we've got the Broncos sitting here at 20. What do you got for them?
So really fun pick, I think, for Denver is Emeka Egbuka.
Yes, I just thinking the same thing.
Need guys that, if Bo Nix can get the ball in their hands, they're going to go make plays. Yes. And he is a great guy to do that, I think. There's a few different guys they could go here. I wouldn't mind Isaiah Bond here either. But I think Egbuka just gives you a little bit more overall ability.
I agree. I think that he is so consistent, he's going to be somebody for Bo Nix that, again, I appreciate what Bo Nix has been able to do, but I also understand a lot of it is the offense and the scheme. Yeah. If that's going to continue to be the case for him, which it probably will with the quarterback of his profile, you need to add more to the offense to make sure teams can't just slowly creep up on being able to solve the offense, right? So adding more talent is how you do that. Egbuka is going to be great for that. I think he'd be a great underneath target, reliable, whole 9 yards there. Also a team that, if they're available, one of the tight ends I think would be a great fit for them as well.
I agree.
Yeah, but we'll not worry about that. In this mock, we've already taken the top 2 guys off the board. Bucks at 21. To me, with the way the secondary played this year with all the injuries, especially too, I think they need to add to that position group. And I think Morrison had obviously an injury situation, which kind of knocked him from being able to improve upon his 2023 season. That was very good. But he's that type of big physical corner they love, right? Yeah. Like, I think it just makes a lot of sense schematically for Bulls, especially if he's going to be retained, which I'd argue that if the option is let Liam Cohen out the door as the head coach or fire Todd Bowles and let him be the coach, I'd take option number 2. But I don't think that's how most teams operate, and I don't expect them to do that unless he has a stinker of a playoff game. So I'm going to go ahead and take Morrison here for that defense.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't – you let Cohen walk. Like, unfortunately, like, if that's the case, you let him go on. You don't fire a guy just to try to keep somebody. I mean, like, and the thing is, Cohen popped up because Canales went to go take a head coaching job. So I think it's easier to replace an offensive coordinator than it is to replace a head coach.
Right. Fair enough. Now you're on the board with my Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you going to do for my Pittsburgh Steelers here?
You want some input here.
I'll give it to you if you want it.
Yeah.
But it's really up to you. So receivers obviously a huge need. There are guys here that I still have interest in. Like we talked about this guy pre-show with Manor. Haven't watched him enough to really definitively decide if I think he's worth a pick this high, but I do like his skill set. They need help in the interior of the defensive line, especially because Ogunjobi is not really that guy long term. Cam has had an unbelievable season, but at some point they're going to have to be prepared for him to move on. And also, as great as Keanu Benton is a pass rusher, the run defense and just the overall ability to play nose tackle doesn't really exist. So I could definitely see them going for like a Kenneth Grant or a Tyleik Williams type of player. And of course, the secondary continues to be an absolute disaster. So corner is also obviously on the board potentially as well. So that's kind of my input on that, I would say.
Looking at like what's on the board here, yeah, I'm kind of leaning receiver here because I think if like you're going to continue with the quarterback situation, you need guys that are going to make.
I certainly hope not. After the last couple of games, I certainly hope not. But I get it.
And
it's
I'm kind of
happen,
between Bond and Iomenor here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure who the better fit is. Who would you prefer as a better fit there?
Because Iomenor is more their skill set fit. To me, Bond I think wouldn't pass their like. They're not super big on like thresholds and stuff like that, but I think he's a little light for them, I would say, just based on past experience with like how they draft guys. So I would say if they're going to take a receiver in the first round, which they really never do, but if they're ever going to do it, this year makes sense with how bad it's been outside of Pickens. I would guess that they'd probably care for Iomenor more.
Yeah. I like that. I like Iomenor.
All right, there we go.
22.
There we go. So Rams on the board now at 23. The offensive line has been difficult this year mostly because of injuries, but also just kind of lacking talent tackles. So that could be a good fit here. They never give a shit about linebacker at all. They literally traded the best one they had with Ernest Jones before the season for some reason or another. So I'm not going to worry about that. And corner is, of course, still needed with them as well. I think looking at the board, tackle is definitely something they should address at some point, but I think, to me, I really like, and I wish he was going to be healthy enough to do the pre-draft process, but I don't think so. But Siobhan Ravel is just like, he's kind of a freak. They don't have this type of player corner. They just don't. And I think that this is the type of player that they could be missing on the outside with the defense, especially with the way the defensive line has played this year. They have been able to figure that out with all the pieces they've added there. I think they need some more coverage in the back end. I'll take Ravel here out of East Carolina. Packers up on the board, Dalton.
Unfortunately, this is going to take a pick that I think would have probably been your next pick with the Chargers here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take Kenneth Grant here because I have a feeling the Packers are about to get their doors blown off by the Eagles.
I fear that as well.
Saquon Barkley is going to run all over Green Bay, and for that reason, they need a run stuffer like Grant that's just going to go occupy a gap at all times.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great fit for them. I think that they definitely need more beef in the middle of that defense. So Chargers at pick 25. I think as much as it may pain him, Tyleik Williams makes a lot of sense for the same reason Kenneth Grant would have made a lot of sense. I'm tempted to maybe take a player that could kind of, not from a run defense standpoint, but like just kind of an all-around defensive line standpoint, could help them with like Shamar Stewart. Somebody like that would be fun. But I do still think that like Tyleik Williams just makes a lot of sense for this group. So throw him there. Washington at 26.
So I think Washington, man, that's tough because the defense is really bad.
They need a lot of help for sure.
But also, the team is going to, at the end of the day, you're going to live and die by Jaden Daniels. You're going to protect him. So I'm going to take Cam Williams here. Just because, you got to protect him. And because, the biggest concern about Jaden Daniels is still health. I think he missed a couple games this year. I don't think you want to run into a situation where he starts missing 3-4 games a year.
I agree. Yeah, you can't really afford to have the same thing that happened with like Griffin and stuff like that back, during that time period for them. You don't want to have an injury derail a phenomenal first season for a rookie quarterback. Ravens on the board here. I'm going to take Wylie Milam here. I know Ronnie Stanley, I believe, his contract is up after this year. I think it is. So they're going to have to figure out left tackle long term. Stanley has been fine this year, but he's never really returned ever since his injury started. He's never really returned back to like that elite left tackle he was when he signed that contract originally. So I think that they could look to move on and try to save some money there without having to re-sign him. And Milam, I think, is a really good left tackle. He's one of the few guys I have watched a lot of, and I do think this is kind of the range where I feel good with him because I don't know if there's a lot of upside with him, but I'm feeling pretty confident that he's going to be a starting caliber tackle for a long time. So like that pick for the Ravens. Vikings at pick 28. There's a player that I would really love to see with this team, but I don't want to do anything since it's your pick. So let me know what you're thinking.
So yeah, this is a weird one because I mean, there's one guy staring me in the face here that I think would be an upgrade over Aaron Jones, but
yeah.
I don't know. That seems kind of silly for a team that still hasn't made that second step yet.
Yeah.
But no, I think where you're in a division with a team like Detroit, I think you got to add defense and you got to add secondary. We're gonna go with Trey Amos here.
Okay, out of Mississippi. Yeah, a guy I need to watch more of because I know a lot of people are fans of his. So we'll throw him here. Bills at 29. To me, I'm taking Shamar Stewart. I think he'd be a really fun piece for that defense. They already have a lot of bigger rushers that they like that style of guy. They have that with Rousseau and other guys there. I think Stewart is a true throw him wherever you want to throw him type of piece along the defensive line, which for a team that Von Miller hasn't been really there for full-time role for a while, but they are going to, I think, lose him after this season, if I'm not mistaken. He might have another year under contract, but let's be honest, he's not the same Von Miller anymore. They need some more help in that front, so I'll take Shamar Stewart here for them. Eagles at pick 30. Where's the highest Georgia player? No, I was kidding.
But we are going SEC. We're going to go linebacker here because they're getting old there. I'm going to go Jihad Campbell here. I think he's a good fit for them. They need that green dot guy.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what they're missing, I think, the most.
Yeah.
And pick 31 for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I got to do it. I know Pacheco's there. I get all that. I need to fit Hampton in the first round. He's just too good to me, man.
This is what's going to happen.
And listen, Pacheco, good player, fun player. Hampton in an offense that is kind of devolved into Mahomes has to kind of just figure it out on passing downs, gives them a lot more juice to be in better situations on passing downs, right? The hope is that obviously they can improve in the passing game with everybody healthy next year, but if they can't or other injuries come up, just turn around and hand it off to the 225-pound dude who runs probably a low 4.4. Let's just do that. That sounds fun. So I'm going to take again. Is that the smartest thing? I don't know. But
it's Mahomes with prime Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
It's just not fair. It's not fair.
No, it's tough, but you got to do it, right? And then finally, the Detroit Lions, who locked up the 1 seed yesterday in dominant fashion. What do you have for them here?
Yeah. This is kind of a weird board. I think we're gonna go edge here just because we saw how much that injury hurt them this year. And when your team is good as the Lions, you can kind of take a flyer on talent. And you can kind of just go and grab somebody that, maybe they'll work out and be a star in this league, maybe not, but you can go and grab Mike Green just because
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, that he's the guy that, if Dan Campbell gets his hands on that guy, maybe he's going to do just fine. So that'll do it for our mock.
If Green falls past there, none of those teams in the early second round should take him there, but the Lions can.
Yeah, there you go. I do like that. So that'll do it for our second mock of the year. Here it is. If you guys just want to be able to see it. So that will do it for the show this week, guys. Next week we'll be back with another of our 3-round mocks, divisional 3-round mocks. This time on the AFC South, getting the South divisions out of the way, as they were certainly the worst in the NFL this year. Considering the Texans are kind of backpedaling their way into the playoffs. I was hoping the Steelers would be playing them, but of course they have to go to Baltimore, which whatever, it is what it is. Point is, that'll be fun next week. We'll get into that. We may or may not have any guests. I'm going to look into seeing if we can get somebody for the AFC South to kind of represent some teams, but we'll do it just like we did our last show. So all of us will kind of collaborate on what we're doing for each team. But any other things you want to throw out there, Dalton, before we get going?
Interesting first round board there. 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. That's
Hey,
that's
in,
the kind
in
of
this
draft
class, why not? I wouldn't be shocked if there's 3 running backs. I could see Caleb Johnson sneak in there if the team falls in love with him, especially. Like I could see it. So we'll see. But that'll do it for this week, guys, and we'll see you.